Welcome back, Christopher. It's lovely to have you again.
Thank you.
And obviously, you've been the creator of the curator even, of the From Page to Screen Festival this year. And I would love to ask, how have you found it being the curator for the festival?
Well, I think it's a very successful format that you've got here, because it's a clear brief, i.e. The festival is interested in thinking about the transition from one literary medium to another, from novels to screen, in which we've enhanced with a strand of the programming which deals with stage plays and how they get to the screen.
Yeah.
Been an opportunity to choose a lot of my favourite films, some that I know very well, some that I think I remember liking, and so on. So I've seen quite a lot of films myself this week, and it seems to be the audiences seem to be very responsive and lively.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just looking around, every time people come out the theatre, they always have a lot to say, love having a chat about the films, and like you said about obviously the films meaning a lot to yourself. What is in terms of the curation, what did the films kind of mean to you when you were picking them for the festival?
Well, some of them were films that are my absolute favourites, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Bonnie and Clyde. Those are sort of great classics that I like very much. But I was also able to show some films that I've always found very interesting and are not so well known, like The Pumpkin Eater, as an example of Jack Clayton's work, because Jack Clayton was a director I worked with myself and liked very much, and I think is sort of unjustly forgotten and underrated. So it was good to be able to bring him to the fore a bit again, and there are odd films like Seconds by Frankenheimer and Parallax View, which we showed this afternoon, Alan Pakula, which are flawed films, but kind of interesting and stimulating and worth showing again, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those films in particular are very kind of provocative and gave a lot to think about. Like you said, flawed films, but very interesting films.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the films that we got to see was obviously The Sun, which you wrote and was directed by Florian Zeller. I found it very harrowing piece, and I appreciate you giving us a chance to watch it. And you wrote The Father as well with Florian, and I would love to know, what was it like working with, obviously, a first-time director who had been more in the stage beforehand?
Well, first of all, it was very helpful that we had become close friends over the 6 or 7 years when I roughly been translating a play a year and putting it on, both in London and New York. So we'd spend a lot of time together, and gradually he decided that what he wanted to do was do a film of the father and actually direct it as well, which was pretty difficult because actually there already existed in France a film version of the father called Floride, which he didn't like at all. Now, this is one of the differences, I think, between France and, as it were, the English-speaking countries, because when he said to the producers, listen, I'd like to do this again, a film that was made like 5 years ago and was a flop, they actually said yes, and let him do it. And he and I, obviously talked about what we wanted from the film and how. But then it was written in a rather unusual way, because he wrote the first draft in French and sent it to me, and then I wrote a second draft in English, changing things, and sent it back to him. He wrote a third draft in French. I wrote a fourth draft in English, and then we met for about a week in Paris and went through the script line by line, and that's what he shot. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Wow, that's incredible. That must have been quite... Because I remember you saying in your in the stage to screen thing when talking about the film that it was almost like a dance when you were working with Florian, where it was that back and forth, constant back and forth. Did you appreciate kind of having that back and forth connection with Florian?
Well, of course, if you're working with somebody who's never directed a film before, you don't really know whether they're going to be able to, how well they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So the lucky thing was that, of course, he turned out to be an absolutely brilliant director, and one that the actors all responded to very, very well. And it was a very cheap film made in 25 days. Wow. And he was, he planned it very carefully, and he was tremendously efficient. It was a wonderful atmosphere on the set, and it was great. But you never know till you get on the floor what, especially with somebody who hasn't done it before, what an experience like that is going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it was a very positive experience for like say the cast and crew as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. No, Anthony Hopkins was. He regularly said that he thought it was the best performance he'd ever given, and he absolutely loved Florian, and that enabled us to persuade him to come back and do a cameo in The Sun.
Of course, that's amazing, and that's amazing to hear. And obviously, The Sun is your most recent writing credit that's come out, and it just makes me wonder, obviously, what's next for you? Have you got anything in the pipeline? Or?
Well, I have two projects coming up. One is an immediate one, which is a stage project with a couple of my collaborators. I've written a musical based on the film The Third Man, which is going to rehearsal next week in London. So that's not only looming on the horizon, it's actually started, really. And then I've written a screenplay based on a novel by Jonathan Coe called Mr. Wilder. I think it's called Mr. Wilder and Me, and my script is called Billy Wilder and Me, more informal. That was my idea. I read, in the sense that I read the novel and somehow could see a film in it, which was not the novel. And I was able to get in touch with Jonathan Coe and say, look, I'd just like to take this aspect of your novel and make a film about that. And he was happy and has been very cooperative. And I showed him the script, first draft, and he liked it very much. And I'm now doing a second draft. I'm about to do a second draft.
Oh, amazing.
And we've planned to shoot it in the beginning of next year with Christoph Waltz playing Billy Wilder, and John Turturro playing his writer, I.A.L. Diamond, and Stephen Frears directing.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really, and we'll shoot it, because it's really a film about a story about the making of one particular film, that Billy Wilder's last but one film, which was called Fedora, which he shot in Greece and Germany. So that's where we'll be shooting, in Greece and Germany.
Wow, that's very exciting. I mean, I'm sold. You've done a very good job selling me that. I'm really excited to see those. And to finish off, really, I would love to ask as well, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to the new generation of filmmakers or even playwrights, what would you give?
Oh, I think you have to have a very thick skin, and you have to. I mean, really, the advice would be, don't do it unless you really feel you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Because it's even if things go 100% well, it's pretty. There are lots of reverses and heartbreaks and difficulties, but when it works, it's fantastic. When everything comes together, there's nothing like it in the world. But it isn't that way every time, and you have to go through some pretty choppy waters.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, even just in the short time I've been doing films, I've noticed that as well. You kind of have to accept rejection, and kind of you have to move past it. You have to move forward.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose. I mean, I've had a very good average, because about 1 out of every 3 scripts I've written has been made. But then, if you look at it another way, about 2 out of every 3 scripts I've written haven't been made. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of it's an industry that kind of thrives on optimism, really,
and waste as well. I mean, people waste a lot of, and there's a lot of. I mean, you're better at navigating your way through it, but there's an awful lot of crap you have to put up with in the first part of your career, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, no, thank you very much for sitting down to talk with us again. And yeah, thank you for curating such a fantastic selection of films for the festival.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you so much.